Welcome to the Ocean Race Summit Europe. I'm Danny Washington, your host for today. It's an honor to be here with you. The benefit of making this a virtual summit is that we can have more people join us from across the world, making the event more inclusive and far-reaching. A big welcome to everyone and a special warm welcome to those of you from our European host cities where the Ocean Race Europe has been stopping over the last few weeks. This summit is linked with the inaugural edition of the Ocean Race Europe, which is finishing this week. The Ocean Race wanted to highlight the potential Europe has in leading the way in ocean health. I'd like to begin with hearing from Richard. So Richard, the Ocean Race is racing with purpose. What's that about?
Well, again, thanks, Danny, and thank you, Commissioner. It's just outstanding to be here with you today. And as you know, the Ocean Race around the world is the ultimate test of a team. And there are less people that have done this race than the amount of people who have actually climbed to the top of Mount Everest, to give an indication. And as a sailor in the Ocean Race, you get this special bond to the ocean, and you care for the ocean, and you respect the ocean. And the purpose of the Ocean Race is to unite people to achieve the extraordinary and to contribute to a healthier ocean and planet. Together with us here today, we have an incredible gathering of experts and of organizations from around the world, all driving for better ocean protection and governance. And many have worked for years and decades for the oceans and done extraordinary things. And we want to join forces, work together with you, and look at the idea of what we call a universal declaration of ocean rights. And could that be the action needed to protect the ocean also beyond 2030?
As a commissioner responsible for oceans, I have a very clear duty to make sure that we advance, we leave oceans cleaner, healthier, for future generations, and that oceans and their ecosystems they serve and provide us with invaluable support as regards of the climate change issues.
So let's jump right in. The Mission Starfish report has a highly ambitious target to revamp ocean governance. What is Mission Starfish, and what does revamping ocean governance mean, and how can it be achieved?
Well, Mission Starfish is a broad and comprehensive action plan, the ambition of which is to regenerate the EU hydrosphere by 2030. What I mean by hydrosphere is the whole of water systems, ocean, seas, lakes, rivers, everywhere there is water in Europe, and we know it works as a system. And what we propose were four things. One, create an integrated EU system of ocean and water governance, a single one, to oversee the implementation of the Starfish mission if the Commission decides to push on the launch button sometime around mid-July. Second, deploy EU external instruments at the service of a better global ocean governance, and the EU has a number of these instruments. Third, develop what we call an EU maritime strategic autonomy, which is about connecting marine on the civil side, marine on the military side, in order to improve the security of the maritime space of the EU, which, as you said, is a very, very large one. And finally, last but not least, to create a network of citizens' assemblies to enable citizens, stakeholders to input, to participate in the implementation of this Starfish mission. So this is a very ambitious set of proposals. So far, the Commission has embarked on part of that.
The problem for the ocean is it doesn't have a voice that we can hear, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Most people are quite aware of perhaps issues on land or protecting the rainforest or something, or shrubland near their farmlands, things they can see, but not many people actually go out into the ocean. And so I suppose it's very easy to ignore it, but it's vital and it doesn't have a voice, so we've got to find a way to give it a voice. It does have its own rights. The whole ecosystem that lives there, including the animals, but also all the plankton, I mean everything that's fundamental to our life needs to have a voice. So yeah, I think it's really important we don't just see it as an object. It's a living ecosystem, and someone's got to stand up for it. So the sailors in the Ocean Race Europe are trying to play their part in many ways. On board, the boats have scientific equipment to measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean, and this is sort of vital information. We get to go to places that no one else really does, and will lead towards putting together a sort of carbon dioxide audit to see how important the Mediterranean is in absorbing carbon dioxide, and really how important the Mediterranean is in helping with the climate change issue.
Mark, this is your third race campaign with the Ocean Race, and once again, your team is taking a strong leadership role, not just within the sailing community, but also within the wider marine industry.
Yeah, today is actually a really exciting day for our campaign. Beyond the fact that we're in the final stages of this leg, we are today launching our sustainability toolbox, and that's a really monumental moment for us. The sustainability toolbox is a suite of how-to guides, case studies, and templates. And really the goal is to try to create a framework for any organization that wants to try to build out a sustainability program.
Throughout our history, our culture and traditions have always taught us that you must think about the future. Don't just think about yesterday and today, think about the future. And so from early age, we are taught that conservation is a large part of who we are and whether we survive as an island people and as island countries. That's why it's important that our laws reflect those values. And so we have been able over the years to put those traditional practices, those values, to become the law of the land. That's why we did the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, which fully protects 80% of our territorial waters, something like 500,000 square kilometers of fully protected area. We understood the intertwined and interdependence relationship of the coral reefs and the vast ocean. Countries need to have stronger and robust laws for them to protect their waters, protect their environment, and protect their people. But at the same time, in doing so, they will also be mitigating the problems and the impacts that their actions are also having on smaller island nations like Palau and the rest of the Pacific.
We are working hard because we know, as a country surrounded by water, by the ocean, we know that our economy, our welfare, our prosperity, but also those of who are to come depend on the healthy states of the ocean. And it is important for the climate, it's important for the biodiversity, but as I say, it is also important in an egoist manner for us, humankind. So we have been working hard in a program that tries to understand how we can characterize those areas that we want to protect. There's a symbolic reference to achieve 30% of the ocean surface being protected by 2030. We are been working to define these areas to raise the bar up to 15% in 2023 and up to almost 22% in 2025, so that we can achieve this goal by 2030.
So, Commissioner, I'd also like to hear more about the EU's commitment to the 30 by 30 goals. With fewer than 1% of European marine protected areas fully off limits to fishing, are there specific blue parks within the EU that will be established in order to help us reach this 30% goal by 2030?
So at our biodiversity strategy for 2030, which is, I think, the most ambitious document we have the ambitious goal of protecting 30% of the EU seas. And at the moment, as an example, we are at around 12% with national protected areas and with Natura 2000 areas. So now, of course, member states will cooperate very closely in defining those areas which could be protected. And together, of course, member states, stakeholders are currently consulting and finalizing the most important criteria, because we don't want it to only establish and call a 30% protected areas. We want to really protect it and ensure that it's monitored, it's taken care of.
Yes. So, Mamta, what are the rights of nature and how can they transform society?
So the rights of nature are the idea that if a corporation can have legal personality and rights, why not an ecosystem? But it's so much more than just that. It's about using law as a vehicle for societal transformation and re-establishing ourselves in the web of life as a regenerative and a healing presence on the planet. The rights of nature actually form the fundamental basis of our own human right to life, from which all of our other rights and freedoms emanate. Yet, we don't even acknowledge it in our legal system. And this is why we have the problem.
And let's take a look at a case study happening now in Spain and how understanding ecocide can help elevate the rights of nature onto the global stage.
To recognize the crime of ecocide as one main purpose is really to prevent further damages and restore the ecological balances that we destroyed. And so the crime of ecocide is really the crime which is missing in international law today, to regulate all the activities and to oblige the corporates and the states to disinvest in fossil fuels, to stop, for example, in the ocean, industrial fishing, to stop mining everywhere without any due diligence. We really need today to ask the states to protect the ecosystems where they have an impact.
Pues mira, el Mar Menor es la mayor laguna salada del Mediterráneo. La riqueza y el valor ecológico de esta laguna hace que goce de figuras de protección, de figuras legales de protección, tanto en el ámbito nacional como europeo e internacional. A pesar de todo esto, el Mar Menor ha estado sufriendo una crisis ecológica que lo ha colocado al borde del colapso. Esta gran crisis se debe a un modelo de desarrollo desde los años 70 que no ha tenido en cuenta las leyes naturales de la laguna y las necesidades ecológicas de la laguna.
My hope is that the crime of ecocide will permit to recognize a legal statute to the commons, the natural commons, and specifically the oceans, the high seas. Why? Because the high seas are not under the sovereignty of any states, but are exploitable by everyone.
Si el Mar Menor consigue derechos, el Mar Menor será respetado teniendo en cuenta su propia estructura interna, su propia funcionalidad y sus necesidades ecológicas. Esto significa que la vida del Mar Menor tendrá derechos en las mismas condiciones que tiene derechos la vida ficticia de las entidades mercantiles y las corporaciones y de las personas que somos los principales agentes contaminantes de esta entidad natural.
Within our societies, we have a means of ensuring fairness that is our justice system, as Mumta has just described. And it's part of our systems, part of our societal structures. And in that system, we give recognition and legal personality to people and to corporations. Now, looking at this in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and our Sustainable Development commitments, We have three distinct elements to that which require balance, namely the people or the social element. Then we have the economy and the business element. And both of these, as I've said, are recognized within our judicial system. But there's a third element, the environment or nature, which is not recognized, at least not to the extent that we want it to be. Therefore, it was a very pragmatic approach to propose that it's essential to ensure fairness and justice, that we need to give recognition in terms of rights and legal personality to nature.
I really do think that it's time that we think over what are the legal statuses of these global commons, natural global commons, and think over what do they need. And they have the right at least to regenerate and to be respected. And I think that this is something that we must understand, especially since we damage so much the oceans. So it's time that we take this page on. And of course, this is possible. This is possible in many ways. In the study presented by Munta and Kilian on the European Charter of Fundamental Rights of Nature, we already have a few different options. We have the option of incorporating the Charter in the EU treaty. We have one article for that, the Article 48 on the Treaty of Functionment of the European Union. But we can also have something, aside, a charter as an interinstitutional non-legislative act by the Council, the Parliament, and the Commission. Sometimes we pretend that we cannot do things, but we have actually some ways if there is a political will, and in that matter, the political will to protect the living and the ocean.
Seagrasses in off the coast of Spain and the Mediterranean are some of the most carbon-rich seagrasses anywhere in the world, with many thousands of years of carbon built up below them. You have salt marshes all the way along the coast, including rich salt marshes all the way through Germany, Denmark, and up through Scandinavia. And these ecosystems really should be part of our global approach to addressing climate change. Europe is also where we really learnt about how these coastal wetlands are important for protecting us from the impacts of climate change. For hundreds of years now on the coast of Europe, people have recognized that salt marshes are very important for protecting them from storms, from flooding, and from erosion, and have learnt to use these ecosystems as green infrastructure. And that learning is really important for the entire world in understanding the role of blue carbon ecosystems for both mitigation and adaptation.
Sea Forester is an initiative dedicated to restoring the forgotten forests of our oceans. Seaweed forests are indeed disappearing all over the globe without people even realizing it, and that is why our approach is to work directly with local coastal communities and their municipalities to boost the value of their coastal regions. Restoring these ecosystems can be a crucial step to mitigate climate change or even to alleviate loss of biodiversity in these areas.
The Posidonia seagrass is the most important ecosystem in the Mediterranean shore. And here in the middle of Cesalines Natural Park of Formentera, Ibiza, we can see the effect of the Posidonia, that every day is releasing a very important amount of oxygen that is evaporating the water. At the same time, is building up reefs that is protecting the shore from the ocean, and is the habitat for hundreds of species. We are in a main tourism destination for the boats, and we witnessed an impact in the last years of the anchors over the Posidonia. So we have created an application, an app that is free in an Apple Store and in Android, and with this app the people, when they are navigating, they will know very clear if they can drop the anchor without doing on top the Posidonia.
Now more than ever, many recognize the importance of climate justice and the need for real climate action. Can you share some specific examples of ocean justice from your recent reporting?
Yeah, well, I think the story that comes to mind is a trip that I did to Fiji in 2019, where I met with leaders from Pacific Island nations, as well as with locals, particularly in one town, Vuni Dogoloa, who had had to relocate because of rising sea levels. And what was really most striking, I think, about this trip is that we're talking about places where people have lived in harmony with the ocean for as long as these towns and places have existed. They've lived in harmony. They've relied on the ocean for sustenance. It's a part of culture in these places. And as a result of things that are happening that are largely totally out of their control, actions of people in the global north burning fossil fuels, that way of life is now under threat. And so it's a real prime example of climate justice hitting ocean communities. And I know this summit is focused largely on Europe. And so I just want to bring up, after I got back from Fiji, I had a conversation with one of the vice presidents in the German Bundestag about her trip to Fiji as well, and to that same village. And she talked about being moved to tears, visiting and seeing just the devastation in the abandoned village, and how that prompted her to lead, to push for more development funding for places like this. And so I think we need to understand that justice, that climate justice story, and I think it'll inspire further action.
Now, I would like to introduce the chairman of the European Roundtable for Industry, Karl-Henrik Svanberg. Karl-Henrik, thanks for joining us. I hear that you and your family are avid sailors. What initially forged your connection to the ocean?
Well, thanks for inviting me here. I was born in the very north of Sweden, north of the Arctic Circle, and spent my first 20 years up in the mountains, an awful lot. And that led me later to the interest in sailing. You see the same exposure to nature and the fantastic side of our planet. I love what Justin said when he talked about Fiji, because here's a people that forever have lived in harmony with nature and are exposed to troubles that we have caused in other places. And when I've sailed in Fiji, but we've also been up in like Southeast Asia, where there's so much populations, and you see the devastation there. And even if it looks pristine and nice on photographs, if you jump in the water in Bali or Borneo or someplace, you will soon swim into a plastic bag or some trash, and it's just time to do something. To give the ocean legal rights is absolutely key. Every piece of land in this world is owned by a country or a company or a private individual that cares about it. Nobody owns the ocean, it's everybody's. But that means that it doesn't have a voting right. We are living with level playing fields in everything we do when we speak up for it when it comes to competition, that nobody's giving rights that takes advantage of somebody else. That concept is very close to home for us. And of course we are behind, as I said, to make sure we do our part now in getting it right with the oceans.
The ocean race has now been sailing the waves for almost 50 years. The ocean is your arena, and every day you feel its unique strength and power. But you also sense and see its growing fragility. You've seen it change and suffer, and you are helping it to heal. Although the ocean can produce a mighty roar as its waves crash on our shores, it has no voice in our public debates. So I salute you for speaking up for it at events like today's summit. Biodiversity loss is one of the greatest threats to our planet and to human health. Our seas and oceans are a particular concern. They are our most natural ally in the fight against climate change, and they are the first to feel its effects. I can announce that we will update our international ocean agenda next year. The Commission will lead efforts on a global agreement on plastics, and it will embed a circular approach across our economy. Ahead of this year's crucial biodiversity COP15 in China and the climate COP26 in the UK, we will also focus our diplomatic energy on protecting our oceans. Our aim is to protect 30% of our land and sea, a commitment we have already made at European level, and now we are also working to increase global climate ambition at COP26 in Glasgow. Europe has already committed to reach climate neutrality by 2050. It is our historic duty to reduce emissions and pollution, to bring us back into balance with the limits of our planet.
We would like to give a final word, the final word, to the youth from around the world who have a very strong and clear message for our world leaders.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is that ocean acidification will get to the point of no return, and marine life will no longer be able to survive.
The high loss of marine biodiversity, from seagrass to whales.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is rising sea levels.
The Arctic is likely to become ice-free, and with that, we will continue to experience more extreme weather conditions that are connected to loss of polar ice, and this can lead to crop failure and food security issues in regions that heavily rely on rain-fed agriculture.
My biggest fear when it comes to climate change is losing the beautiful islands where my ancestors lived for centuries, and at the same time losing our customs, our language, and our traditions.
My biggest fear is that we are going to leave the most vulnerable in our society behind.
What's going to happen with those 200 million projected climate refugees by 2050? With limited natural resources, including fresh water, and mass migration across borders, will climate be a reason for armed conflict in the 21st century?
I want world leaders to recognize that we are currently going through a climate emergency, threatening ourselves and our oceans.
I demand world leaders to strengthen their Paris Agreement targets and reinforce climate commitments.
We must call on policymakers to call for complete global decarbonization and to preserve 30% of both land and water by 2030.
And ensure that governments are taking action on a local level to prevent trash and other waste from entering the waterways, and as a result, addressing ocean pollution and addressing climate change.
Our world leaders have no choice. They must bring in laws and policies that are going to protect our ocean and thus protect us.
Now it's really time to act.